Hi everyone,
Hi guys.
lovely to see you again. So it's beautiful weather. The spring is sort of fading. The sun is coming. The summer is here, I think. And we've been smelling some really beautiful things, haven't we?
Yeah,
Another wonderful house that has not been on our radar until
a
now.
new house. It's a house. It was one I was aware of a little bit. I remember Kafkaesque before she stopped. I think this is one of the last houses I remember her writing about. So I was kind of familiar with the name. So we've looked at a couple of fragrances which have been up for the Art and Olfaction Awards. A Christelle Jacquemin fragrance and a couple of Audacious fragrances. And Dian St Clair contacted us and offered to send us some samples because her fragrance Eve was nominated under the Artisan category. And did we want to smell some samples? So yeah, she sent us some little vials, and I've managed to make, as you see, we're still not in the loft. I mean, we really were. We hope we may be very soon, but we're still doing this by Zoom.
We get closer every day.
So this little decant I've had to split between the two of us, so that Joe can smell them as well. So
Dan sends them to me. They're great. They're really good.
So St Clair. So she's only been around, I guess you say, for a couple of years, since 2018. I think it was quite small batch artisan fragrances. She used to be an artisanal dairy producer, like a producer of dairy products.
I read that. That's interesting.
Yeah. we were talking recently about backgrounds, architects, neuroscientists, dairy maker. So she's not, but often this sentence is normally followed by she is self-taught. She's not completely self-taught. She studied with Eliza Douglas and a bit with Christophe Ludemel. And if you look at her website as well, she's had a little bit of encouragement from Luca Turin. She lives on a farm in Orwell in Vermont. So that's all the stuff I'm repeating off the website. But these smells. I'm just going to read you some of the words when I was describing one of her fragrances. I've got lots of pages of notes here, but I think this line of text kind of sums up: dark, luxurious, rich, vintage, opulent, thick.
Oh, thanks, mate.
But that's what there were some of my first thoughts about one of these fragrances. So they are all rich. They're all extrait. They're either 35%. One of them is 50% concentration. Casablanca. They are all. They've got an old world feel to all of them. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah. Yeah, they really. I think they all really respect the long journey the perfume has come on, and they sort of pay tribute to They don't pay tribute to the classics necessarily in terms of reference points, but they pay tribute to the style and the vintage of those books.
Yeah, I mean,
and
I think
the journeys that they take you on.
With pretty much all of these, you're not getting a real kind of modern, contemporary, freshy, easy wearing. These are all, from what I said, they're all quite rich. Some of them are quite heavy. They're not all that heavy. But if you are someone who, like us, loves the old world, and when I say old world, it's easy to think we mean it smells like grandma's. It doesn't smell like grandma's. It smells like fur coats and trilbies and long rain jackets and Burberry coats. That's what I mean by old world.
Very evocative perfumes.
Absolutely. The other thing I found with a lot of these is you've got an amazing progression. When you wore them, I felt like there's a couple of them, especially when you first spray or swipe, as in my occasion, you almost get this kind of olfactory, like match striking. It just goes boom, and then you have a few things which kind of go on quite quickly. So some of them, you almost go off the top into the mid really, really quickly. You really get this kind of. It's not just like a citrusy aromatic, and it kind of sits in one place the whole of the time. It really kind of develops and kind of tells
Yeah.
story. So should we talk about the fragrance which is nominated is Eve. So this is
Yes.
part of her Audacious Innocence collection, which is 2 fragrances, Eve and Pandora. Now these 2 fragrances, they share all of the same notes, except that Pandora also has some opoponax and labdanum in the base. So really, really, really similar. They're both inspired by a painting called Pandora, which is by John William Waterhouse, who is a pre-Raphaelite painter. So I'll put a picture up here. And I don't know if you've seen it, Joe, but it's obviously it's in a garden, but the garden is really, really dark. It's the darkest ivies, the darkest oak mossy, bitter. Her
I think
skin,
I have seen it before, that picture.
it's Pandora opening her box, but I think they now say that it's a mistranslation, isn't it? That it's actually an urn.
Wow.
Anyway, but the box she's opening is obviously bright and her skin is very pale, but everything around her in this garden is dark. And I think that kind of like that light and dark gives you a bit of a clue. Yeah. Running through both of these, you get this apple.
Yeah.
You kind of get a kind of apple accord, which is maybe quite an obvious one from Eve. Then I feel you get, in both of them, you definitely get rose, which maybe represents woman. And this kind of balance of light and dark. So both of these fragrances are 35% concentration. A 30 ml costs $175. 13 ml is $90. So that's quite expensive. So if you're going to charge a price like that, is it worth it?
Yeah, good question.
Is it, Joe?
To me, I think with all of these, but especially with a couple, including this, I think these are some of the most beautiful perfumes I've smelled. No question. I think these are some of the very finest things I've got my nose on. And I would put these up there quite happily with the best things I've smelled from Guerlain and other sort of benchmarks. They're different, but they're crafted beautifully. And I think Eve, for me, was fantastic because I've not looked at any official breakdown of this, but I got all of the notes that I got etched quite clearly. It wasn't just it wasn't a puddle or a melange of stuff. I got a real apple, I got a real bergamot, I got a real leather, I got a rubber accord from somewhere with that leather, which was fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying to Joe, like I always make notes, when I'm working through these, and sometimes I have kind of half a page per fragrance, whereas this, I've kind of got pages and pages for these fragrances we looked at, because you really get the sense of everything unfolding. So the first one I tried, actually, we're talking about Pandora and Eve together because they do share a lot of notes, but I started with Pandora, and just when you first smell it, there's just this dark richness which just kind of grabs you straight away. It just feels thick and expensive. This is where I wrote dark like rose, rich, vintage, opulent, thick, and that it's just what you kind of get straight away. And this apple note, which is in both of the fragrances, it's a little bit kind of bright and a bit more transparent in Eve, but in both of them, this apple note, which I think apple's a difficult note. I think maybe I've smelt bad apple, but I've smelt apple done badly quite a lot. Whereas this, it's not too juicy or it's not too sweet. It feels like it's a bit more bitter and therefore a bit more real in this. I guess
it's not that apple note that you get in like you get a sort of apple flavor that in jelly beans and things like that, which doesn't really have anything to do with apple. This really feels like a real fresh apple.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's
more savory there.
It must be it's an apple accord that she's constructed to try and create the illusion of an apple. It's not just a apple absolute or something. Yeah, she's really kind of worked to kind of create that. You get Eve's apple, which is there for Pandora as well, and then quite soon I got rose, which segued.
Yeah.
I felt kind of like apple segued into rose, and then after having had quite a bitter, dark, rich opening, I felt like jasmine kind of softened the rose a bit. And this was, I was saying to you, Joe, I got there were two fragrances which I thought of when I was smelling this. Not that the fragrances smell exactly the same, but about the half an hour point on Pandora, I got quite a lot of Turkish rose and jasmine, and I was reminded of Bengal Rouge by Papillon.
Ah, interesting.
You know, that quite sweet, but still really, really, really rich rose. Yeah, and all the while, I think Dian St Clair does gardens really, really well.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, it runs through quite a lot of these. This kind of this sensation of being in the garden, and for me, it's weird. When I was smelling a few of these, I was going around. I live in Hertfordshire, just outside of London. I was going around a few National Trust properties, looking around gardens, and they're very old, you know, traditionally well maintained, formal gardens and herb gardens and things like that. And I just felt when I was trying fragrances like Gardener's Glove, even Pandora, I really got that, you know, that English garden with.
Absolutely.
I got there was tomato leaf with green vines growing, and quite a good deal of rose as well. It's not I didn't feel it was a tropical lush garden. It was one which also had an apple orchard.
Very herbaceous gardens that I think she's done here.
Absolutely, yeah. So I felt after having gone through the slightly kind of the Turkish rose with a bit of jasmine, it then went in a bit more kind of bitter green direction with a hint of oak moss, and you got that Bulgarian, I think it's Bulgarian rose. And then I was reminded a bit of Tobacco Rose by Papillon. You know, so it's another, another Papillon reference. But then what you were talking about, it then gets really kind of almost taken over by the orris.
Yeah.
This kind of...
That for me is the biggest thing in the dry down of this. It's funny actually that she was a dairy farmer before, because if you could sort of make an orris butter like this to spread on toast, I would have it any day of the week, because it's so rich and creamy.
But we were talking, you know, we said, like, is it worth this kind of money? It's obviously, these are, you know, there's a lot of rose, there's a lot of orris. There are expensive things in here. They do smell expensive. They do smell worth the money. And I felt that eventually it took me quite a while to get to the kind of labdanum and Popinax. I didn't get it until about 5 hours in. It still stayed green and bitter for quite a long time. And then I got this kind of resinous dry down. But it just the journey it took. All the things we've talked about, we spent quite a long time talking about them, because I really feel that's what the experience is like. Sometimes it's kind of flash bang whang, whereas it really took me on a journey.
I think it's a real sort of take yourself off to a quiet room and, you know, sort of bed in for the day and see how it goes. It's one of those fragrances. They're quite rare.
Yeah, I feel it's really interesting to have released these two fragrances with such similar notes. So I did find what was weird is that although they do smell similar in terms of notes, they felt quite different to wear.
Yeah, totally for me.
And that Eve somehow felt a bit more positive and bright, and it didn't quite have... I've just said I didn't get the labdanum until the end of Pandora, but the first time I wore Pandora on its own, then I wore Pandora and Eve, and then when I smelt them like that, I did feel I got some resinousness straight away from Pandora, but I was only aware of that kind of when comparing it to Eve.
Eve just felt bright to me somehow.
Yeah.
For longer, and with Eve, I got a lot more like orange oil in the opening with the bergamot. I felt it was much more a petitgrain leather orange oil kind of thing. So I mean, certainly in the opening.
Yeah.
So that took me on a slightly different direction.
Yeah, but I feel generally like Eve stayed a little bit, not hugely, but maybe a little bit more transparent throughout. But For me, for my taste, I would just always choose Pandora. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess I always want something like heavier and richer and darker, so I'm always going to go for that one. And so there's the question of why is Eve nominated for the award and not Pandora? I don't know. It's interesting to see what they thought. Yeah, because I can't help. I would always, if I was going to buy one, buy Pandora.
yeah. There's something about Eve that is. It's a little bit more energetic maybe, and somehow it's sort of. It doesn't speak louder, but I think it just speaks more directly. I think Pandora is not the kind of thing that you'd smell first time round and think, I get this fragrance. I understand it. I think you have to wear it a few times. You have to. I mean, I've used up my little sample there, but I think you have to be taking it and wearing it for multiple days.
I think
and bedding in for the journey. It invites you and it offers you a lot more.
it's interesting because this, the first example of her work I smelt was Pandora, so that was my first impression. That was my first try. Next, Casablanca.
Casablanca.
No, this is one which this is the one I had heard of. This is the one which is 50% concentration. So that's really, that's over like, I don't think I know of any perfume which is as strong as that. You're almost into kind of a tar territory. It's more expensive. It's $190 for 30 mil. 13 mil is $95. So it's not inspired by the film, which you might think the film Casablanca, but this was created when she had spent 3 months looking at the window, looking at the snow. And she wanted something which transported her to somewhere more exotic. So she created this. Joe, how did you get on with Casablanca?
This is the one that wowed me the most, I think. I loved it because it was so classical. It got everything I wanted in the beginning. It got this beautiful bergamot orange combo, grapefruit as well. I think it was really bright and embracing, and I had no hint at the beginning that it was going to settle down into this sort of animalic tuberose, oak moss, musky thing. I even detect, and I don't know, I need to test this, but I detect something really quite funky underneath. I don't know if it's civet or if it's Hieracium, but somewhere in the base of this, there's something really funky done in a perfect degree, so that it never overwhelms and it never underwhelms. It's just right. I think it might be the old Hyrax coming through.
It's like, for me, this is a almost kind of perfect animalic sheepra. You've got like a massive glug of fruit at the top. Then you've got thick florals. Then you've kind of got bitterness underneath, just ramped up with like really quite a lot of animalics. It's not overly. Again, like my third Papillon comparison. There was moments when I thought of Zalame by Papillon, and I don't think it is. I don't think it is quite as funky as that. And then, but I think the one it reminds me more of is Bala Versailles by Jean Desprez. It's so. But I mean this is one which, yes, it is expensive, but it smells expensive. This smells expensive. This smells like you unearthed some wealthy relative. They had a big kind of cabinet, and they had a very precious bottle of something which had been unopened for 50 years. Actually, I'm going to put that up.
For me, is a perfect example. I mean, I've just sprayed what little drop I had on left there. This is a perfect example of you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't find this expensive at all. In purely monetary terms, it's higher than you might expect. But for the quality of what you're getting there, I just have no hesitation. I think that's absolutely stunning. And do you know something I've also been thinking about recently? A house, which we should properly explore, but a house that I've smelt a lot of things that are sort of meant to be big orientals, leathers, sheepras. but opening with things like orange oil or juniper or tomato leaf, and that's memo.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
they could only, for me, they could only dream of making stuff like this.
Yeah, I don't think
Dream,
Memo is in the same league as this.
but they've got that same idea of
Yeah,
these slightly diversionary openings. I just think this thing feels like all of a completeness. That doesn't make any sense.
I think, and I
like
think
a simple-
it does appeal to people like us. If you're people who love, who want to be able to get a hold of those old Guerlain X-rays, those old Coty X-rays, but you're worried about, do I want to spend the money on eBay, and what if it's spoiled, or I can't get the top off, or what if it's rubbish?
Yeah.
Go and buy this, because I think this is what you're hoping for, what I was hoping for.
Oh my God, it's so incredible.
Yeah,
it's so incredible.
And it's that real kind of, like, as I said, it's that rich fur coat. Like, it's just glamour. It's not modern and fun and like fruit chewy, boom, boom, boom. It's not that. If you want something to make you feel young and lively and go clubbing, and don't buy this. But if you are somebody who loves old-fashioned, rich, luxurious, opulent things, boom.
I mean, this thing will take you back 100 years without feeling at all dated. It's on the one hand, it's heavy and rich, but on the other hand, it's kind of lighter than air as well.
But I think it's
dancing.
Yes, it is heavy and rich, but there's like that fruit at the beginning is so like it's just in such perfect balance with that bitterness and that heaviness, and it's just amazing. Love it.
I'm going to buy a bottle of that. I'm going to go on her website and I'm going to order a bottle tonight, because I need that in my life.
It's emotional stuff. Something a bit different. Gardener's glove. So this was as an Art and Olfaction nominee last year. So this is slightly cheaper. This is $125 for 30 ml, or $65 for 13 ml. So still not cheap at all. This, I can completely see why this fragrance would be nominated. So this actually, I think it came out 2 years ago, even though it was nominated last year. This for me is really great storytelling. It smells, we're coming back to this kind of story of a garden. And for me, I found when I smelled it, there was a kind of amazing kind of burst of citrus at the beginning. Also, as well as the citrus, there was a good deal of tomato leaf, which I got a little bit of that in Pandora and Eve, but I got a bit more of it here. And this green vine smell. I mean, I love tomato leaf. Tomato vines. I'm growing tomatoes at the moment, and I just love. It's one of my favourite smells. I've still yet to encounter a fragrance where which really kind of does it justice. And this is one of the best examples of it, I think.
Yeah.
And that,
it's
for me,
it's so vibrant.
That green just gets more and more bitter for me. That sense. The kind of sense of the garden vines. I think it's galbanum that really gives it that kind of real kind of bitter greenness without you ever really thinking about it. I also get there's a bit more fruit in this as well, isn't there? Like blackberry or blackcurrant or something like that.
I'm sure there's blackcurrant going on in there in the opening.
Yeah. It just, again,
tomato blackcurrant, really.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but think of
jasmine,
because of my reference point, like in English, like a real classic English country garden.
Yeah.
But what is interesting, I think you need to wait about an hour or so before you really get to the heart of this fragrance, and you realize that it's actually a leather fragrance. And
that's the trick, isn't it?
You don't get any suggestion of it for the first hour or so, and then it really, I mean, I've got this on this cart, it's been there for a while, and it really is a rich, full leather fragrance. And just this idea of these, these cracked, old, aged gardener's gloves, which have been, pulling off fruit from like brambles and hedges, and pulling off tomato vines. all of that is kind of mingled on these gloves, and that's what you smell first. And when you put them down to rest, you eventually get the leather underneath with that, like a hint. Not this isn't a kind of funky fragrance, but there's a little bit of hint of funk. You know, almost like you've had your hands in there, and they've maybe kind of been sweating a bit.
Yeah.
I
got quite a nice dose of something like a really resinous benzoin or something.
Yeah.
Right in the dry down, which was really beautiful, actually, I thought.
It gets quite balmy and quite sexy.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Perfect.
Yeah. Interesting. This is one which a lot of the time when I spray things and I'm trying things, my wife goes, "Oh, what's that? It smells of poo." But this is one, she said, the way she described it says, that is a very, very attractive smell. That's the kind of, and she's never said this about anything else. I said, that's the kind of thing you want people to smell on you. Which I think is a strange compliment for something which isn't an obvious, straightforward fragrance. It's a complex, rich fragrance, but yet, to her, as an outsider,
it just goes to show that you can make something really interesting and original and still attractive and still beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, that's the sort of heart of niche perfumery and artisan perfumery to me.
Right. Two more.
Really good.
So these are the two. So the two newest ones. This is. Should we talk about Pharoah's Passion?
Yes,
so this is. So we're back to the $175 for 30 ml. Joe is Egyptian.
I am indeed.
And this is your choice. And you're a passionate man. So Pharaoh, I think the Pharaoh in question is Cleopatra. So it's interesting. We've had Eve, Pandora, Cleopatra. I mean, some very famous ladies. How did you get on with this?
I just need to remind myself. I really enjoyed it. I found this one. You know, earlier on when I was talking about these gardens and I was talking about quite herbaceous things, this was one that I really included in that. I got a lovely dose of like cardamom and rose kind of playing together. And I don't know, I found in a few of these, including a couple that maybe we're not speaking about today, but the rose is very much that sort of minty, fresh rose geranium thing that I love. And it's what I love in a lot of Thai rose fragrances, is that treatment of rose.
Well, it's interesting because I found,
gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This starts with like a great big. Initially, you get rose, but then quite quickly, I found it was taken over by that spice.
Yeah,
yeah, and you know, this is a kind of real, from her description, it's a real homage to, you know, the most ancient of perfumes. And she talks about there was an ancient perfumery discovered a few years ago, and relating that to the time of Cleopatra and imagining what she could have worn. And when you first smell it, that is what you get, this spice, which is mostly cardamom and cinnamon. It's the most spicy of all of her fragrances I felt, but yet there's also still a lot of rose. And then I completely agree. I felt this is the most prominent geranium. I think it is actually geranium, not just rose, because it really it's quite searing the way I think it kind of works with the spice.
Yeah,
kind of fresh and kind of cutting.
And is there some incense going on in here as well?
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. What was weird about this? I felt you kind of had this. You got a hint of rose, then you got quite a lot of spice. Then there was another kind of rosy. I got the kind of rose jasmine thing, which crops up in a few of our fragrances. I got a bit of that, but then I found, for me, it then quite quickly went to the base when I definitely got incense. And incense,
it's interesting as well that the incense is kind of lower down in the.
Yeah, I was reminded a bit of Magus by Tiana Reinhold, TRMP. You remember that really bitter, almost acrid incense? I think it was Ethiopian incense. And as opposed to, sometimes we get incense as a sparkle. This time, incense definitely felt like it's like really balmy and resinous, and I
Yeah,
don't know, and I don't know. Maybe I've been kind of romanced by the idea of the kind of an Egyptian tomb, but I'm really thinking of kind of embalming fluids and oils, and that's the
really.
kind of image.
And this sort of incense, it feels to me like it's like not the sort of light, ethereal, smoky incense. It feels like the myrrh, labdanum,
Yeah,
resinous kind.
absolutely.
It's not that fleeting, here's a Catholic Church impression.
Yeah, God, I definitely, especially on this card, actually. That it's weird smelling on card. These are ones which really come to life on skin a lot more. But I definitely got that labdanum like towards the end, like
Yeah. It is
sticky,
labdanum,
beautiful.
isn't it?
There must be. Let me just look at her. Yeah, labdanum resin. She's on the list.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm trying to find some negative things to say because they can't all be perfect. I found that I suppose so lots of the others I really felt they unfolded quite slowly. I felt this unfolded quite quickly actually, and after the middle was quite short-lived, and I got to the base, and after about an hour and a half, I found it sat quite close to me for this kind of base dry down. I did feel actually it lasted a really long time. The dry down lasted a good 6 hours. So this isn't a short-lived
Yeah.
fragrance, but it's it kind of
Delicate thing.
yeah, it kind of lacked the voluptuousness of some of the others,
Yeah.
especially I mean obviously something like Casablanca, but even Eve and Pandora, even Eve felt like it was just all a bit fuller and rounder an experience.
Yeah.
Which is strange because maybe on paper some of the notes of Pharoah's Passion, they in a way attracted me a bit more. I thought this was going to be one of my favorites, whereas it's not.
No,
Still
I
awesome,
did love it. I did love it, but there were others. There were others that spoke to me more personally, I would say.
Okay, so one more.
What else do we have?
Song of Aubrac.
Oh yeah.
So this is $175 for 30 ml or $90 for 13 ml. So it's still an expensive fragrance. So this is an homage to Narcissus. So Aubrac being a small town in France where it's one of the kind of principal sources of Narcissus. And this, yeah, I mean, it smells of Narcissus. You've got to love white florals, this kind of honeysuckly Narcissus white florals. I mean, there must be some others, like some ylang ylang. Let me look at the notes.
Yeah.
Jasmine, ylang ylang, orange blossom. So,
Here it is.
and I feel it's almost, I think, in many ways, it's like she's trying to create a soliflor, but kind of ramping up some of those qualities.
Yeah. I have to say that the first thing I got here was just a beautifully oily citrus.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like the juice. It felt like all the oil and the rind and the peel.
I got hint
which I really love. But the Narcissus comes like swinging through, doesn't it?
Mm.
I keep smelling Casablanca. I can't stop. I'm sorry.
There's even a hint. There's even a hint of that blackcurrant. She seems to have she's obviously got some really, really good blackcurrant absolute, which just keeps cropping up. There's a little bit of that. But yeah, it's initially this kind of really bright, brilliant.
Well.
What, sorry?
Some orange blossom as well. I'm getting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The floral and the oil.
But for me, this took quite a big turn. Like all of that brightness, you kind of had this. Brightness, maybe a bit of incense, sparking that up. Incense is a top note here rather than incense as a base note, or even like a hint of aldehydes or something, just to kind of give it some brightness and light. And then you kind of
quite salty as well.
Well, that's. I think this gets really quite almost taken over by ambergris. Like I found after a couple. Let me look at my notes. After about an hour and a half, I felt like ambergris and musk really kind of took over this, and it kind of went indolic, and then it went past indolic it went really quite musky and ambergris.
Yeah.
Almost like I've written a bit dank
Yeah, I
here.
could believe that.
Almost like it's somehow become a bit overripe.
Yeah.
Like they've been out, like maybe they've like all the petals have fallen over and they've got in a pile on a hot day and they've just become a little bit, yeah, exactly.
Oh.
A little,
But then there was something in the dry down. I remember there was something tempering that. There was a saltiness, but I got a saltiness in the opening as well. But there was, as well as this sort of dank, musky, I got like a musky vanilla or musky tonka, I'm not sure. But then there was something sharp in the middle. There was something quite grassy as well.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, she says tonka bean and double distilled vetiver.
Double what?
Double distilled vetiver. So I guess that could be your kind of grassiness.
Yeah.
I have to say,
it balanced it out.
This is a really interesting fragrance. It's probably quite a good technical achievement. It isn't really for me. I mean, I really like enjoying wearing white florals. I like wearing ylang ylang florals or jasmine. I'm not someone who shies away from that kind of thing, but it was just I just felt it got a bit too dragged down. Like, and I felt, I mean, I like dark fragrances, but this became a bit kind of dank and it felt a little bit almost moldy to me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you're going for that as a concept, then that's fine. I mean, if you're talking about, for instance, the old bat from Zoologist, where the whole concept was this sort of damp bat cave with banana skin, it's fine. But when it's not quite what you're expecting,
yeah,
I think there has to be a reason. Well, and that's for us, of course, but there has to be a reason to go there.
I mean, Narcissus, again, it's one of the, like, we've talked about expensive orris and rose. Narcissus is another really, really expensive ingredient that she's obviously paying homage to. And you expect it, I think it sounds a funny thing. You expect it to be beautiful. You don't expect it to be dank and dark. And I love, like, darkness in fragrances. I love the way the darkness in Pandora, and obviously there's darkness in Casablanca. But there I just felt this Song of Aubrac, it just got a bit too dragged down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
So there we go. So she does have two other fragrances, which I haven't actually tried. You've had a little sniff of them, haven't you?
I have, yeah. And I mean, maybe this is something we'll talk about in future, but I think they're fantastic as well. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Frost, very austere, very herbaceous, much more herbaceous than any of the others to my nose. First cut, again, you've got basil, you've got yuzu going on there, I think. So they're very different. Not your traditional citrus, but something a little bit more exotic. So yeah, I really like them. And again, the tomato leaf theme comes back in again. I mean, I think they're fantastic. I really love them a lot.
Do you especially you've tried some of the, like, the first the earliest ones a bit more than me. So do you get any kind of sense of, trajectory as a perfumer, or do you feel it's kind of like she's hit the ground running? Yeah. If you think of, like,
for me, I get the use of certain notes and certain styles, and one of them for me is the use of very bright, herbaceous, almost diverting openings. Another is this rose geranium balance that I think it keeps all of them bright and balanced, so that then whatever follows afterwards really feels like a journey. These things don't segue quickly and erratically at all. The openings are all big personalities in themselves, and then have a big personality behind. And there's just like a middleman that sort of smoothly evens out the transition.
Yeah,
and I think that's a hallmark I smell in all of them. For me, the ingredients, I think, all absolutely wonderful. I mean, I don't really know what she's using, but whatever they are, they smell incredible.
Yeah,
natural, but they
are.
perform.
Yeah, they did perform, and they all. Even I said I felt the Pharaoh's Passion I felt kind of died down and went quite close. I actually found Gardener's Glove went quite close as well. I felt that, but I don't know. But I thought Gardener's Glove went close, but then my wife noticed it on me a bit of a while later. But all of them I felt lasted well, which you'd hope from these kind of expensive fragrances. But so, what are your favourites?
My favourite, without a shadow of a doubt, is Casablanca. That was number one for me. Pandora next, I really loved, because I love the use of this apple bergamot thing in the beginning, but then the fact that it becomes a kind of leathery orris butter thing, I find incredible, and I wouldn't expect that journey. 3 for me was Gardener's Glove, again loved. 4, I think, would have to be Eve. And it's slightly far, I mean, although it's obviously the same idea as Pandora, it's slightly further away because it just didn't speak to me in the same way. 5, I think, was Song of Aubrac, and 6 was Pharoah's Passion. Pharoah's Passion I loved again, but I don't think it did. I don't think it did the sort of journey for me as well as the others. As wonderful as it was, I'm kind of criticizing.
No. I think we've got to,
I can't criticize any of them really. I love them all.
No, I think I would say it's interesting, almost the same thing. I think I would put tricky. I think I would actually slightly. I mean, Casablanca is absolutely amazing, but I kind of feel that, with like old Mitsuko and old Bella Versailles and things, I kind of not exactly the same fragrances, but I've kind of seen it before a little bit. Whereas something like, I really love Pandora. I'm thinking of a fragrance that I was if I were to buy, and Pandora is not really like anything else. So I think I would probably say Pandora, Casablanca, Gardener's Glove, Eve, Pharoah's Passion, and then Song of Aubrac. That's what I would say.
But how do you even put these things in order?
No, but we're just.
I've got your bottle of XYZ. It's going to take pride in the collection.
That's our personal taste. It's interesting that I feel the 2 most recent, the Song of Aubrac and the Pharoah's Passion, just didn't quite have the same olfactory story. I mean, Pharoah's Passion did tell a good story, but they just didn't. The journey wasn't quite as kaleidoscopic. The journey was still there, but it wasn't as consistently bright and interesting as some of the other ones.
Yeah.
So there you go. So if you have tried this House St Clair, let us know. I mean, the other thing I've got to say. So we've recently talked about Christelle Jacquemin fragrances, who were also in the Artisan category, and then we've also talked about some zoologist fragrances, which are in the main category. In terms of quality, these fragrances are much, much higher, I would say.
Yeah.
But then they're more expensive, so you would expect them to be.
Yeah. They all feel as if you've gone back in time, or you've gone to the Osmotheque and said, "Can you please give me these vintage formulas?"
Yeah.
Or can you give me vintage bottles? And they said, "Yep, here you go. Don't tell anyone."
Yeah.
They feel like an absolute treat. I feel really. I mean, it sounds really bizarre because there's hardly anything in these now. I feel really privileged to have just this little amount in each of them, that I can spray that on my wrist again and relive that first experience of wearing all of these.
Yeah.
That feels like a gift. And so you're onto a winner when that happens.
But that's maybe why I'm saying Pandora is my favorite, because it was the first one I tried out of all of them, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
When you first, it's almost
you get the WTF moment, don't you?
Yeah. Awesome. So if you've tried them, let us know what you think. If you've got your favourites, let us know.
Yeah.
But there we go. Till next time.
Bye.
Happy sniffing. Awesome.
That's so good.
Should we see if we can do a couple of posed photos as well?
Oh, yeah. you want me to hold up the little bottles?
Yeah, or if you do like a kind of sniffing or something.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
I finished that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can put something in. Stop recording.